Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
Phelps with 10 metres left. 3 minutes too good. The crowd roaring. Freeman wins goal.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Listeners, welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show. I trust you've been having a great week, and I hope you've been out there pursuing your physical best performance. On today's episode, I caught up in the flesh with Peter Spida Everitt. Spida Everitt is an icon of Australian rules football. His career spanned a remarkable 16 years and 291 games, spanning a career across St Kilda, Hawthorn, before finishing out his career at the Sydney Swans. In today's episode, we talk about career highs, career lows, and career learnings. We cover the debut match. We cover training ethic. We cover being voted the 50th out of 52 most professional player by his playing group and the effect that had on Spida. We talk about his debut marathon, where I had the pleasure of running along Spida in 2017 in the Gold Coast Airport Marathon. We talk about outside football projects and so much on this episode of the Physical Performance Show. So let's jump straight in with Spida Everitt. Spida Everitt, I've been looking forward to this. You and I spent a little bit of time in running shoes earlier in the year, but before we go there, let's talk about something one thing that scares Spida Everitt.
Me, as in like anything outside of snakes, spiders, any form of reptile, mice. Probably mice are the worst. For some reason, I don't know why, just don't like mice, just the smell of them, if there was one here, I'm looking around the room now, if there was one here, I'd be up on the desk.
So any good reptile stories of late? Oh, you're out in the outdoors a lot?
No, they gave us a nice little challenge. I actually saw my first ever, and I travel a lot around Australia, but I've only ever seen 2 live snakes. One was in my backyard, and the snake man couldn't catch it, so I was horrified. But then the next day I saw it the other part of the house, and a mate of mine caught it. And the only reason we caught it is because the snake man the day before said it was not venomous. So we caught it and we put it in a pillowcase. And I was going to take it out to the bush and let it go. And my wife, she's a Kiwi, and she hates snakes. And so I chased her around the house. It was the funniest thing. She was screaming. She locked herself outside, and I had the snake inside. So, mainly, yes, reptiles and snakes.
Oh, mate, I don't think you're alone there. I can't stand them, and particularly Cherie coming from New Zealand. I think there's even more of an.
Well, there's nothing outside that can hurt you out there. So, yeah, they hate snakes, anything to do with them.
Spida, if you weren't a professional footballer through your career, obviously you're in a post-career now, what would have you been?
Well, if the teachers thought I'd be nothing, of course. A lot of teachers, when you don't listen that much at school and don't get high grades, I was never a polished, school student. I used to be very, very good at maths, and outside of that, nothing. But I actually signed up to join the army. I wanted to join the army and get a trade as an electrician through the army, because I thought that was probably, I know you had to do your apprenticeship those days, which was either 3 or 4 years and then another year at the end of that, and then you could, if you wanted to leave the armed forces, you could. So I thought, by the time I do that, I'd be only 22, 23, so that's what I was going to do. And then I ended up getting picked up and asked to play seconds footy at St Kilda.
So growing up, what was life like growing up for you, Spida? Brothers, sisters?
Oh, yeah, well, Dad was a policeman in the early days, and Dad was one of those, he worked 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table, and Mum was always the stay-at-home mum, so I woke up and made our sandwiches every day. A Vegemite sandwich, 2 biscuits and an apple. And the apple normally had a bite out of it because my younger sister would bite them and put them back. But I had 2 older sisters and 2 younger sisters, and then a younger brother who ended up... My younger brother was 15 years younger than me. So, yeah, spread out family, but all mum and dad still together, and... Yeah, so a close family in that regard, but at the same time with Dad's job of being a police officer and then he went into security and other things, we moved around a lot. So I think my sister went to like 13 different schools.
Wow.
Yeah, so everywhere.
So moved around, so came out of Melbourne.
Mainly only stayed around Melbourne, but it was more, like South Melbourne, and then we went to up towards Mildura, Robinvale, and then back down to the Mornington Peninsula, and just moved around.
So you got a real sense of that area. Spider, when was the first moment that you fell in love with the football?
I think growing up in Victoria, that's all you did. Footy is all you did. You didn't have any other sports, and those days, all you'd ever. I just remember, the even under 9s footy, under 10s footy. That all you do is you go to training on your Wednesday, Friday. You'd play on the Sunday morning, and it was normally freezing cold, where you'd try and break the ice to, of the puddles, and your mum would have streamers on the car, and she'd be looking forward to her pie, and the kids, getting something to eat at the footy, and then you'd play your game and spend the rest of the day in, your shorts and your boots and mud from head to toe, and that was every weekend. That was footy. The whole family would just look forward to that weekend of footy. But even after school, even walking to school, well, what do? You used to just kick the footy, aim at trees, aim at power poles. There was nothing else to do. That's all you ever did.
And so who were the players or the teams that you most aspired to, through those early teenage years?
We grew up barracking for Collingwood, even though I'd never actually gone to an AFL game. The first AFL game I went to, I actually played in. So we never went to AFL footy. We used to watch a little bit of it. Dad used to bring me home little bits of pieces about Collingwood because, my dad's family is a huge Collingwood supporter-based family. But I suppose my best memory of who growing up and who I liked, and this really helped me later on in my career, was I remember I was at Regency Park Primary School, and it was grade 4, and we were doing some footy drills, and Dale Wakeman, the flea from Richmond, come out and did some skills with us, and he said I could stand out the front with him because I had good enough skills to help him, be a part of showing him how to train, and him doing that and then signing my jumper, I never forgot that. And now, I've gone on and done that thousands of times for schools around Australia, and every time I see the flea Dale Wakeman, I remind him of that day because it's something that I've always remembered.
The impact that you can have on others, you're invisible to that, aren't you?
Yeah, and I didn't understand that until you get into that situation and then realise. So it's been one of a great learning experience like that when you see a lot of people ignore that side of it. I think that's one you've got to embrace because even nowadays, I've been retired for a while, but I used to have a club called the Spider Club, and it was just juniors, and I just had a gentleman come up the other day and goes, "Can I get a photo of you? Because my son was in the Spider Club, and he's 24 now, but it'll be just funny if we can send him a photo, Yeah, so funny.
We were running the Gold Coast Marathon this year, and I remember down towards the turnaround at Burleigh Heads, one of the runners, another competitor, was sharing that you had inspired some young boy years ago, and now he's doing this. I think he had some hardship in his life or a challenge.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's beautiful, Yeah,
you get that opportunity. We've been very blessed that way. I haven't played a lot of finals, but I've had the opportunity to walk into children's hospitals and make sick kids smile and get really close to some kids that do Make-A-Wish Foundation, and received a photo the other day through social media of this young girl that I was teaching how to handball when she was 6, and now she's trying out for the St Kilda female team, which is just fantastic. And women's footy in AFL is going to be huge. It's going to continue to grow. But when you see them and give them those goals, it's nice to see. It is good.
Spider, in terms of your debut, you mentioned the first time you'd been to a game, proper match, was your debut. Take us through your debut. What was that like?
Yeah, it was down in Geelong, and the first game of '93. So I went down there, and I often thought that my first kick was a goal, and then I actually got the VHS out. And your first kick as a goal was pretty, historic, and you think you're a little ripper. And then I actually got the VHS out about a year ago and looked at it. And it was actually my second kick. My first kick was a grubber along the ground out of bounds. So I'm not going to tell anyone. No one knows any different.
Not now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we ended up getting a win down there in Geelong. So good celebrations back all the way down the freeway. But my dad, I remember my grandfather coming and he goes, "Oh, come on, you've got to have a shot of whiskey before your first game." And I said, "We're not in the 70s now. No, I'm not having a shot of whiskey." But they were pumped because they knew I could drive home. So they could sit up there in the bar and watch their son and grandson play footy and think, "You little ripper, now he's got to drive us home."
So Spider, leading into that, because you were how old at that stage? 93? 18. So 18, just come through schooling, which sounds like it was a bit bumpy for you at times, trying to find your way through that. 18, you signed professionally at that point? Was this semi-professional?
Yeah, this is the hardest thing for our journey is that, in the early 90s, it was only still, footy. You train Mondays for a bit of recovery, Tuesday, Thursday, play Saturday. That was it. So we started getting, some part-time work. You had to have part-time work that would allow you time off. So if you were injured, you'd have to, spend a little bit more time around the footy club. But, kind of that 93, 96, 98 kind of era was where it started to turn real professional. So you're going from, a lot of blokes that have been working, throughout their careers and now suddenly, no, well, I've got to put work on the back burner because I've got to be a professional football player. We're going to start training at times we play. Who would have ever thought about that? So that's when it really started to change. So I was a little bit lucky because I could only really have the part-time jobs when I first come out of school and be able to, work with even teammates who had businesses. It was probably harder for the older blokes to say, we're just about to finish our career, but now they want us to actually train all this time. I've got to start choosing between, the next 40 years of my life or the next 3.
And did you see, some of your teammates, club mates, not make that challenge, that transition successfully?
Oh, a lot of players find it really, really difficult, when the game's over because, and it's no different to a lot of other businesses. When you walk out of a business and you could have been there 10 or 15 years. Not very often does the boss ring you every week or 2 weeks later to see how you're going. The AFL and the NRL are no different. So really difficult time for players because you kind of you have got everything you need. People are there, they're helping you. You've got a heap of volunteers, and then suddenly you walk away from footy, and then you wake up on. I remember you wake up on the Monday morning and you think, what am I going to do now? What can I do now? And hopefully, I think that's the biggest part where AFL can get better is establishing players' welfare when they do retire. So you've seen it through a lot of players, but nowadays I think most of them have come out pretty good.
And I mean, it's something I've always had empathy for in the work that I do as a physiotherapist, helping people, perform in whatever their endeavours are, is that transition, whether it's elite competition or but when that time comes to transition, it's the psychology around it that's so challenging. It's it's easy to say you're not your sport, but when you're paid to be your sport, to be the performer, it's hard to differentiate your value from that, isn't it?
And a lot of people too, you think about they've been at the top of their game, so they've got thousands of people watching them, they've got people signing autographs, they're idolised by a lot of people, and it's shut off pretty quickly. So, I think in AFL terms, the average is 4 years and 40 games. So that's not a lot. 4 years and 40 games, and you dedicate probably your hardest years of footy because you got to start dedicating footy these days when you're 15, 16. So you're dedicating 15, 16, 17, you kind of get picked up, 18 you're there, you give them 4 years, you're 22, you get dropped. What do you do? And it's that hard when suddenly you've been blessed with everything and now, all your mates have finished their apprenticeships, they're all getting good money, and you've got to go back to the start. And people, when you've been at the top and you got to go start at the bottom to try and rebuild, a lot of people don't understand that, and a lot of people don't realise that, when you do go into the workforce, you're not going to be just given the top job. You've got to actually start somewhere.
You mentioned, average span 4 years, Spider. Your career was, contrast to that is 16 years, 93 to 2008, almost 300 games. One of the great players for that decade. You've been quoted and attributed as revolutionising the role of ruckman through 10 years there, a 10-year period. What were the secrets? What would you say are the top 2 or 3 ingredients to your longevity?
I think to my longevity, I think the main thing was realising what it takes to be a consistent performer. We had these meetings in 95, 96 when they first started, and we were the first club to do it at St Kilda, where you'd get every player and you'd actually judge every player from most professional to the least professional. And I remember I was playing senior footy at this stage, and I was still voted as number 50 out of 52 in a club as one of the most unprofessional players there was. Yet I was playing senior footy. And then it was a kick in the guts. You sit there and you think, you're flying, you're playing senior footy, you're signing autographs, you're in papers, you're on television. How good's this? And then the whole club has a different perspective of you. The players are going, you could be so much better if you actually trained harder, if you actually lived to your potential, and you did all these little things. So then we started to work on little things, and then you see the consistency of your form get a lot better and a lot more consistent. So for me, I would have said just the consistency. You get what you put. You only get out what you put in. So the consistency is a big one for me. And the other one is I always kind of do something extra when no one else is kind of watching. So I've always something little, but I would always train when I knew no one else was training, and it was just that mental edge that I'd go into a game on a Saturday or a Sunday and say, did he do this during the week? Did he do that? And it was just like that little bit of mental thing I could fall back on, going, that's kind of how I prepare myself.
And you mean, Spida, just to clarify, did he or did they do that? You mean the opposition?
Yeah.
Versus your teammates?
Yeah. Did they do that during the week? And then, it could be individual, it could be team, but I always trained different times to try and just to say, and it was always extra. So you have your normal training, but then just do that little extra that's going to help you come Saturday, Sunday.
So an example of that might be what? You just run a couple more laps, or you spend a bit more time on the park?
Yeah, I'd always get up at maybe 5 o'clock and go and do a swimming session or whatever it was. Just, I don't know, I just remember, I think it was Dennis Rodman or one of those, and I don't read books, but saying I train when no one else trains, and I've always thought, what, do they train when I'm training?
And Spida, you mentioned there that at one point in your career it was a bit of a shock to you that externally had all the rewards and the adulation and the following, yet internally inside the club your teammates weren't necessarily giving you the same not love, but you're 50th out of 52nd on the professionalism rank or whatever that scale was. What were you doing that you think had you be rated 50th out of 52 or whatever it might have been?
Oh, well, I wasn't doing anything. That's the thing. I was playing senior footy, but I think I was just relying on, one, we didn't have a really strong team. Two, I was a ruckman, so there wasn't, we're not dime a dozen. And, three, I was relying on my skills. So I wasn't really pushing myself to get the most out of myself, but I was still playing. So I'm thinking, what? All these accolations coming and I'm doing, what I'm doing. Why change that? And then, when you actually get it pointed out and they start going, you're unprofessional because you're this, you don't do this, you don't care about that, but if you did these, you'd be so much better and so much more consistent. It is an eye-opener, and look, you'd love to be able to do it in every business. I'd love to bring it in radio now and question everybody who works in radio, and it's just give them honest feedback.
Yeah.
And I've seen the honest feedback works in AFL clubs. It's one of the biggest things nowadays, and it's not to belittle you at all. It's not to embarrass you. All it is to make you better.
And there's always two sides, the feedback being given and the feedback being received.
And the advantage is it's not given by individuals, it's given it as a team. This is what the team is saying about you. So they have small groups. So for me, I can't go and whinge to my best mate and say, oh Jesus, this bloke's saying this about me. He can just say, no, this is what the team is saying about you.
Yeah.
So it's not an individual thing. So, that's the good thing about it, is that you've only got yourself to blame with the results that you get.
It's powerful. Spider, of the many games, the three clubs, from St Kilda to Hawthorn, finishing your career in Sydney, when you now look back on your career, there's all those years, all those games, and I'm sure you can pinpoint lots of things about the games, but if you were fast forward into your end of your life on earth as we know it, what would be the moments of your football career that you think would sort of flash before you? What are those moments?
Yeah, tough. Always. Yeah, it's always a tough one because, as you say, you span your career over long journeys and you kind of forget the day-to-day games because you get out there and you do your job, and there's some players that can remember every kick, every mark and say, no, during the third quarter I remember doing this. I don't know, I can't remember too many about those, but I still prefer the big highlight games of being able to just play in a night grand final. We didn't play in a lot of finals, but never lucky enough to play on like an Anzac Day. But I think it's just lining up like in a night grand final when you've got 60, 70,000 people there, being able to represent Victoria as well. We had State of Origin those days, so I played alongside some great players with Tony Lockett and Nicky Winmar and Robert Harvey and Nathan Burke and some fantastic players, Lenny Hayes, and you can keep on going. But to play in a Victoria versus South Australia game where the rivalry between Victoria and South Australia was so big, the MCG, thousands of people, and just having just a different team, like when you've got Gary Ablett at one end seeing you got Buddha Hocking, and then you got Paul Couch, and you've just got Wayne Carey. You've just got a big different lineup, and it's just when you walk and jog out onto the ground next to those guys, it's just you think it's surreal, even though you've probably would have already played nearly 100 games.
Yeah, wow. I mean, obviously 2007, you guys came close there at St Kilda. Qualifying final, you sustained a shoulder injury. Some say that might have cost.
They did.
Cost the team in the grand final.
Cost them the grand final. No, it cost them the premiership.
So Spider, how do you deal with that at the time? The disappointment of that.
Well, the hardest thing with that was that I broke my collarbone in the first final, so we went on, made the grand final. Adelaide and St Kilda were the two better teams for the year. Used to have really good battles against Sean Wren, who was exactly the same as me, with size wise and trying to get forward and kick goals. So we normally had a pretty good battle. So that would have been a massive highlight come grand final day for people to see us go head to head anyway, because both of us were both in pretty good form as well. But look, the mental demons of that, I was only 24, so I'm thinking, another time will come around. There'll be another time for this. How good's this? I've been playing 4 years. We've played we've made ourselves to a grand final. This is going to happen each and every year. And then a couple of years later, you think it's just getting harder and harder, and suddenly you find yourself at the bottom of the ladder, and then you go to an opposition club, and you try and do it there, and you just find out that they're so difficult to win. You look at Hawthorn, and some of the players I played with there, played in 4 premierships, and St Kilda still haven't won one. And then you look at Richmond, who've just won one after 30 odd years, and then the Western Bulldogs the year before after 70 years. So they're just to try and explain to people that to make the top 8's hard enough. Then you got to get the top 4, top 2, get there on the day and everything go right. So you didn't appreciate that as much when you're 24 because you're thinking, okay, this is going to happen every year. So, the more it goes on, the harder it is.
Does time make peace with that? I mean, obviously, the time... you falsify that there's years to come, and then as your career continues on, you realise that those years get lesser and lesser. But then when you finish your career, and now fast forward into your post-football career, does time make peace with it? Is it always within you as a competitive person something that you're like, oh?
Yeah, you're always disappointed because you always see, and everybody, whenever they're introduced, are always introduced as a premiership player, and I think just the reunions of those would be great. Just to be able to go down there and see the people you played with, how much work and time and effort goes in, and that's not just even the players, but just all the officials, the guys and the girls that come in and just volunteer to get the team up and running each and every week. So there's so much that goes into it, and you'd love to be able to bring that appreciation back 5 years after it or 10 years after it, so you can have that really good close bond with the people that meant so much to you that year. And plus, I suppose St Kilda, They were one in 66, and it just means so much to so many people. We know what footy does to local communities and communities. So yeah, it gets harder when you kind of get older. But as I say, unfortunately, you can't do much about it other than saying, oh, we would have won if I was there.
And one of your teammates, one of my uni mates from first year at uni here on the Gold Coast, we've spoke about Nick Rewalt. I remember following Nick's career from early in his journey, and grand finals, and missed it. But Nick's got plenty of time; he'll get one. And seeing him now just recently transition out of the game, it can happen even to the best, right?
And then 100%. There's some of the great players, and I think one of the best stories I've ever heard in AFL was the fact that Gary Ablett Senior was at Hawthorn. He was at Hawthorn, and he wasn't doing the team things, and they sacked him, and he went to Geelong, and he went on to be one of the greatest players ever. Never played in a premiership, yet Hawthorn played in 5 days, 5 nights, while Gary Ablett was at Geelong. Yeah. So you sit there and go, that's a difference between a champion team and a team of champions. So that's what they did.
We'll be back with Spider in just a moment, but today's episode, as always, is lovingly brought to you by POGO Physio. We exist to help you perform at your physical best, and we do this through our industry-first, fixed fee and unlimited access 2, 6 and 12-week finish line programs. We want everyone who walks through the doors of POGO Physio to get a high-five moment. What's that? Well, we tell you that we love you, you've finished rehabilitation, you've gone from injury back to your physical best, and we don't need to see you again. If you'd like to find out more information about POGO Physio, our 1-hour initial appointments, discovery cover sessions, our industry first, finish line programs, or even our wellness boosters, then be sure to jump over to pogophysio.com.au. But now back to Spider. Of all the highlights that you had, which are many, amazing career, was there any moment in your career though, Spider, where you wanted to walk away from the game?
Yeah, found a lot of a couple of times very, very tough. I got done for racial vilification, so that was always a hard one. I got done, the first player to get done, and fined significantly, and missed a few weeks. And off the back of that, it was just a really hard time to go through. It was just the understanding, the awareness, and look, it's probably one of the best things in hindsight that's happened to me, because you learn so much from unfortunately being right at the bottom. And with media camping outside your house, and your daughter getting harassed at school, and your family getting picked on, and receiving letters in the mail with razor blades strapped to pieces of cardboard, you kind of sit there and go, is this all worth it? And you really do find yourself down for a couple of weeks, and trying to find your way out of it. And you're sitting there watching footy, knowing that you can make a difference out there, but the reason you're on the sideline. So probably that part was the hardest, and going through the mediation, and just even chatting to Scotty Chisholm, who was the guy I had a crack at the time. But over the years, and then going up to Darwin, and as I mentioned, I travel a bit, and when I first went up to Darwin, I ran into his mum and his sister, and had a good chat with them. So that was probably the hardest part, but at the same time probably the one you're going to learn nearly the most of.
Yeah, it's almost, they go hand in glove, don't they? The pain with the learnings, but and
it's hard. I think a lot of sports people have learnt from their mistakes. So, and that was one of them.
Spider, injuries just before the performance round. Obviously the shoulder we touched on, but what were your other major injuries and you struggled with for a while?
Yeah, I was always pretty good. I did my medial ligament outside of footy, so that was 10 weeks just getting that right.
What were you doing outside football? Gardening.
And I ran and fallen over into a pothole and just smashed it and snapped it.
Sorry, Spider, we've got to go a bit deeper on this. Medial ligament and gardening, running a pothole.
Got into a pothole because I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was in and out, and I always do gardening. But
you were running at the garden.
No, I was running to get the phone. My daughter I ran into a pothole, and my leg had gone down there, twisted it, and snapped it, and I got up and I could walk, but then if I went left, you know how you slowly push it in, you'd feel it was giving. Yeah. So I rung the doc and I said, I don't know what's happening here, doc, I better come down. And Stoney put me in, and so I missed the first start of the season with that. But outside of that, it was only a couple of clean-ups, and I broke my jaw. Well, I didn't break my jaw. Earl Sporting broke my jaw, punched me in the night grand final, which cost me 2 weeks. But outside of that, yeah.
Did you have your jaw wide? Were they wiring that or they?
No, and you kind of sit there with the collarbone. We've spoken about the collarbone a couple of times, about breaking it in 97. You could nearly plate it these days because, and probably could have played.
Yeah.
But those days you wouldn't have thought about having all the plates and the screws and all the technology they got today.
Yeah, it's different. Spida, performance round, and we're going to talk marathon. In your time, what was the training session you most disliked in your professional time? That is.
Oh, look, the training I didn't like mostly about it was the treadmill training, and sometimes I had to get up before work and do a training session on the treadmill at like 3 a.m. because I start at 4, knowing that I had a full day, so I couldn't do anything else. So the hardest thing for me was actually trying to get those sessions in, and some of them had to be at 3:30 in the morning, and they could only be 4 or 5 kilometres on the treadmill, so probably those sessions were the worst.
What about the session you most loved? What was the one that you just couldn't wait to get into?
The one I really enjoyed, and it was the one around about 18 kilometres, which if you asked me before I started even doing a marathon and saying that I'm going to run 42 or even go for a training session and run 18 kilometres, it was unheard of. But just where we were, and when I'm able to do it on a Saturday or Sunday, get up at 6 o'clock, jog the streets, and when you're jogging 18 kilometres, it's amazing how many people are out there jogging at the same time, saying hello, getting out and about. So, normally when I travel, I'd go and walk around and look at things around town. But probably around the 18 kilometre mark on a Saturday, Sunday, I actually didn't mind it.
Hit your stride. Spida, when you were in your playing days, what was your pre-race meal routine? What would you eat before you went out on the
Well,
pitch?
the morning, it was interesting because the morning of I'd always have my cereal and my coffee, and then if it was a night game, I'd always have a sleep in the afternoon, wake up, have my cereal, my coffee, so I'd treat it as a day game, but even though it was at night. So cereal was my number one go-to in the mornings, always. I'd always just enjoyed cereal and coffee.
What sort of cereal were you going? You would have been Nutri-Grain for sure, right?
Oh, no, a little bit of everything. I'm a mixer, so sometimes I'll have my Wheat Bix with my honey and nut crunch on top, or sometimes I have my Cocoa Pops and Rice Bubbles together. So I'm just a big fan of cereal. So that's something for some reason. Even if we had a 5 o'clock training session or a 6 o'clock training session, I'd always wake up well enough beforehand and have something to eat.
I was actually thinking Special K. I thought that might have been in there somewhere. Those old 90s ads.
Yeah.
When you were training days, Spida, through your football career, bedtime, morning time, were you fairly disciplined around that? Were you a bit more sort of... I've been very, very good like that. Unfortunately, I've let it go since I've finished. I want to try and get back into some form of discipline, but my diet was always... and that's what I'm probably disappointed with now, more so, because my training, I would always never be late. Number one thing is you never be late, always be there early, always do everything to what you need, just make sure you do absolutely everything that's on the list. But my diet was one that was funny because I never ate chips, fried food, anything like Macca's, pies, anything. I'd never eat anything like that because I was too scared that I'd be in the piggy group, and so I'd never eat anything like that. But then I could never put on proper weight either. So I always sat around 102 kilos, which I always wanted to be a little bit stronger against some of the other ruckmen like Dean Brogan and Primus and these kind of fellas. So I wanted to be about 106. And I had all the protein I could, but because we ran so much and did weights, I could never actually sustain muscle. So it was hard. So, Spida, and I mean, to put listeners that aren't familiar with your frame, potentially non-football listeners, you're
I'm 6'8".
6'8".
Yeah, 6'8", so 202 centimetres, exactly the same as a standard doorway. That's the size. So I'd always would have liked to be just another 4 kilos heavier, just to be able to help knock over some of the bigger boys.
And we're sitting here about just under a metre apart. And to put listeners in perspective, Spida could reach out with his arms and easily wrap me with them.
Yeah. That's a wide note.
Spida, who's the athlete you most admire and why?
The athletes are I always look at some of the different athletes as well. I love a couple of different sports, and boxing's not a huge sport, but some of the boxers who are just their fitness, and I know every fitness is a little bit different, but I always admire different sports for their fitness ability, and one of those is boxing. I don't have an individual favourite. I used to love Mike Tyson, but he's not a great example, is he? Only because he's a huge man. But look, I think just being able to watch players, it's so hard for us. We don't get to see your players like your Ian Thorpes or your Sally Pearsons and these people, what they do behind the scenes to get them right. We're only lucky enough to see realistically AFL players, and some of the players like Robert Harvey, who won 2 Brownlow medals, he'd cover 17-18 Ks a game, but just seeing the ability of them to be able to train and just train until they're wrecked each and every time is a great example of, you've got to see professional people do what they do best live. And that's could be going to watch tennis, it could be going to watch golf, whatever it is. Going to watch them train is a different thing, because then you see them hit 2,000 golf balls, you see them hit 400 serves. You don't see that come their big game day. So I just love watching some of the players I was lucky enough to play with.
What you shared, we shared off air is one of the reasons why I wanted to start this, is just to get behind the scenes of those successes, those building blocks. Spida, the toughest trainer that you ever saw, who was that other than yourself?
Look, I reckon, I wasn't the toughest, but...
Well, you went from 50th on the list up to...
I was in the top 5 at one stage, so that was always nice. But, look, for me... I reckon there was a guy there called one of my mates, Mad Dog Cripps, Jason Cripps, actually ripped his hamstring off the bone twice. So he ripped it off the bone, had an operation, got it done. He was back at training, and he was a club man as well. So he did everything for the footy club, and he wasn't blessed with skills. And he used to have a crack at everyone because he wasn't blessed with skills, but what he was blessed with was the ability to get himself absolutely right. He'd sleep in the spare room come Wednesday, so he wasn't disturbed by his missus. His diet was to perfection, and he got himself right. And after he ripped the hamstring off the bone, he got it fixed, 12 months off, come back, training again, did it again. So another 12 months off. Come back, played a couple of games, and then the club sacked him. So it was like a career that you don't wish for, but just the way he absolutely got everything out of himself and did absolutely everything right was amazing. Like, from the diet to the weights to the running. And as I said, he didn't have the best running patterns. He didn't have the best boxing ability. He didn't have the best cross training as in swimming, but he got himself and taught himself to do everything as best as he could.
Yeah, brilliant. Spida, one word to describe your playing style, what would have that been?
Probably erratic, I reckon. A little erratic. I remember the coaches always said, if we tell you what to do, you do it absolutely perfectly into the T. If we don't tell you what to do, anything could happen. So it was kind of very similar to radio these days. The boss can tell me what to say. Okay, if he doesn't, well, anything can happen. So more like that. But it's I think our playing style really started to change. There was a couple of other ruckmen around the same time where we all come in and, when we first started, normally you'd hit the ball in the middle and you'd go behind play and stand in front of the opposition full forward, and that's all you do. Where, we started, Corey McKernan, a couple of others started, and then we actually started running around the ground and being like a midfielder in a 6'6" body or 6'8" body. So we started covering a lot more distance, kicking goals, being able to play up forward. So we did change, not me personally, but the group of us started to change the way ruckman were perceived and also played the game. So I suppose, erratic, but at the same time, that was our playing ability, be able to change that kind of perception of ruckman.
How would you describe, Spida, being in the zone?
Everyone's different being in the zone, but how I describe it is that you've got self-belief. You've got self-belief that it's a funny one in the zone. You've got a self-belief. You've got a cockiness. You've got a bit of arrogance, but at the same time, you've done the work that it's showtime. I'm in the zone. This is it. This is about to do what this is what I do. I'm in the zone. We're about to go.
Final question in the performance round, Spida. What's the hardest training session you've ever done?
Oh, we got off easy. We got off the plane, third night game, or my third game was the night game in WA, so we had to catch the red eye home. So we flew from Perth straight to Moorabbin, straight into Melbourne Airport, and the coach says, and we land at 5 a.m, the coach goes straight to Moorabbin. So we went straight to Moorabbin, and he said, rightio, pair up. So we had to pair up, and then we just trained 4 quarters of footy, but it was nothing else but running. So we had to start in the middle, sprint to the boundary, touch the fence, but he blew 2 whistles. So your partner goes, and then the second whistle, you had to catch him. Did that for 15 minutes. Then we had to run the stairs, the grandstand, up and down, up and down. You weren't allowed to more than 2 steps away from the person in front of you, or else everyone was down doing push-ups. And that was straight off the back of a massive flight, and that was a good hour and 20. So that was one of my hardest.
Jeez. Spida, in terms of life after footy, you've gone into a successful career in radio, and also some of your own projects like the Great Australian Traveller.
Yeah.
Great Australian Traveller?
Yep. Doorstep. Yeah,
Doorstep, sorry.
But we travel.
Oh, sorry.
Very similar.
I butchered
it's a name that I wish I could change, but I come up with that in my last year of footy. I thought, it sounds really good, but sounds good at the time, and I think, gee, we should have thought of an easier name.
No, look, it's easy. Spida, one of the projects you've done in recent times was teaming up the Gold Coast Airport Marathon, running against rival station here on the Gold Coast, CFM, with Ben Hennant running. It was deemed as the Spida versus Ben.
Yeah, AFL versus NRL
battle, and we connected in the lead up to that with the work I do as a physio. How was that experience for you, though, the marathon on the day?
Yeah, look, I loved it. I really enjoyed the lead up. I enjoyed the build-up. I've never done a marathon, never thought I'd do a marathon. I thought, going against a rival station had never been done before here. So, look, the lead-up was great, and I think I learnt so much more about even running than I had ever before. So it sounds really silly when you've played professional sport for 16 years and, we've done a lot of running, but I learnt so much about running in those, probably about 6 to 8 week build-up than I did over 16 years. So I did enjoy it. It was hard. It was harder than I ever thought, and a lot of people say, look, it's hard when you hit the 30 kilometre mark and, you kind of do the work and you do a couple of runs around 25 and get to 30 and you think, I'll be all right. No, you're not. No, it's a whole different atmosphere when you're out there.
And at what point? I mean, I ran alongside you, and
you jogged. You weren't even breathing.
I was moving. And at one point, I didn't tell you this, but I had one of the guys from your team with the radio station riding ahead to get lollies and that, and I'm like, mate, Spider's going to need this and that and this, but I'm like, Spider might not, but I'm going to. I think I'm going to hit the wall here. Yeah. I was happy when those lollies were coming back. But, mate, it always gets tough around 30, but when did you feel like, was there ever a moment where you thought like you weren't going to get the thing done?
Yeah, the 30 was always tough, and I remember at the 15 when your calf starts getting sore and you're going, oh my God, I'm at the 15, and then you get to the 21, which was great, and 30 was good as well, but I reckon it was around about the 38, 39, and we've come over the bridge, and it's just the mental picture you put in your mind. And I had a mental picture, and I knew the track exactly. I thought I knew the track because you come over the bridge and you said, yep, we turn around at the seafood place, and I know the seafood place at the bottom of Runaway Bay because I run past it or drive past it every day. And I thought, right, okay, so we do a U-turn, run back over the bridge, and I know then we've got around about 3K, and I thought, okay, that's pretty much my home straight. I'm happy with that because I know I'm heading back. But when we ran over the bridge and got to the seafood place, we then had to run towards Paradise Point. And I know it was only up around about 500 metres, but that hurt. That was, I don't know why, it was just that mental edge of not knowing I had to run there when I'd planned so much and had my mind set on going straight back. So that kilometre there, I was nearly ready to say that's it.
And there's something about, and for listeners, we're referring to the Gold Coast Airport Marathon and specifically the far north turnaround. But as soon as you turn and you've psychologically you're heading home, it's a different ball game. And
it was just that 500 metres, and it was, as you say, like now I drive up there every day and I sit there and go, gee, I was whinging so much about this little bit, but it was just, as you say, that psychological moment that I thought I had,
it's huge.
Done.
Spider, I mean,
there was another one point though.
Which one was that?
Well,
not the Spider-Man that came on the course. It was some random guy in a spider suit running next to Spider.
Yeah, that was awesome. No, I liked him. Look, I love the marathon because there was so many. You can't pick somebody by looking at them how well they're going to go in a marathon. There's some people who look twice as fit as me and we end up running past them because they're walking, or there's some people 5 times bigger than me zooming past us. It's just, but the other part was when we were running down and we still had about 7 Ks to go, and there was, I love the party atmosphere. There's people with music and all that going, and a bloke runs up, have a swig of this, have a beer, and I love my beer, and I said, nah, I couldn't possibly have a beer, and I thought, gee, I am in a world of hurt.
Well, mate, I've got to say, on the recording here, well done, because I was amazed that at not one point did you walk. It's fair game to walk an aid station or 2 or 3 or 10, and not one point did you walk.
Yeah, so, I went at the pace of walking towards the end, but that's what I was trying to do, mentally say to myself, don't walk. If I continue to jog it, I'll get through it, and then and did, and really happy I did.
Mate, amazing achievement. Just before we go off the running, the final sort of time I got together, Spider, you mentioned you learnt more about running those 6 to 8 weeks leading into it. What's one thing you learned about running in particular?
I've just been able to run about, what do you call it? How many steps you have a special fancy name? Cadence.
Yep.
Yeah, how many of those you have, and still now if I go for a jog, I try and run that cadence of 90 steps, and just that little being able to not overstride things now, just actually run a little bit more fluent rather than trying to overstride it. So that's probably the biggest thing I learned, and just the mental side of thinking, I can actually go out and run a half marathon. 21 Ks now, I'm happy to go out and give it a go, where no way known I would have looked at that 2 months before the marathon.
And any more marathons in sight, Spider?
Oh, look, I'd definitely do a half. Full ones, not quite sure. I'd like to get myself fit enough again. It's just getting the time to be able to do it. And, as you say, it would be nice to be able to travel to some other places and do them. So the half, absolutely. A full, I'd want to do a little bit more training than I did last year, only for the fact that if I do it, I still want to beat my time. If you're going out there, and plus, my ex-wife beat me by a minute, so there is a little bit of a
unfinished business.
Well, my daughter sits here and picks on it, saying, "Mum beat you by a minute." It's like, okay, we'll get there one day.
All right, well, we might get the band back together. Spider, what's one bit of advice you'd give to listeners around how to perform at their best, whatever their endeavour physically is?
To perform at your best, I think it's. I think you've got to learn to train by yourself. We can all have coaches, we can all have people out there telling us exactly what to do, but I always, off season, or if I was to train, I always used to say, train like the coach is watching. So train like your coach is watching. So, instead of going at 80% if you're supposed to be going at 100, get out there and do it. If you're going to do it properly, or don't do it at all. So that's always my mantra, is do it as if the coach is watching. So, you don't pull up 5 metres short. You don't do 7 reps instead of 8. You just, the coach is watching, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah, brilliant. I heard somewhere, and it's always stuck with me, a shortcut always cuts you short.
Yeah.
In training.
It's all those little things.
All add up, don't they?
Yeah.
Spider, fun question. You've heard it before, I'm sure. 3 people at your dinner table, living or past. Who's at Spida Everitt's table and why?
Yeah, look, good question. Look, I love Iron Mike Tyson. I love Dennis Rodman. All the bad boys of pretty much the world of sport, haven't we? Gee, actually, no restaurant would take us. Looking at that lineup so far, but I like the backstory of Mike Tyson, the world, unbelievable undefeated heavyweight. Yeah, he's gone off the rails, but I think to come with that background early, like to be able to grow up in that kind of era. Dennis Rodman, as I said, they'd go to Chicago Bulls at 3 a.m. and he'd be training. And he wasn't a superstar because they had Michael Jordan and everyone else in the team, but just the way he trained, he was a little bit different. So sporting wise, I always love those two. And the other one, well, I've got to have, because my favourite is Bern and Fanning. I just love Powderfinger, and everything I ever did everything was to my happiness. So I just love those three.
That's cool. Well, that'd be a fun table. I mean,
it'd be a bit different.
So that's brilliant.
Not quite sure if they'd all get along now. Bernard doesn't talk about Powderfinger, but that's okay. We'll work it out.
Actually, I was flying to the New York Marathon a couple of years ago and checking in. Here's Bernard Fanning with his guitar. I'm like, that's a nice little touch.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to the marathon. But Spider, every guest of the program issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. What's Spida Everitt's challenge to listeners going to be?
Look, I challenge you. Yeah, like I used to do. I used to love it. Train when no one else is training. So, if you're planning to do a marathon or you're planning to do something, just train. It might be during your lunch break, because everyone else is working. But, for us, it was always footy. You knew the guys loved to sleep in. So I'd get up early and I'd train. And, and that's the challenge is that, train when no one else is training. And in Victoria and, I suppose in the southern states, it's a lot harder because it's a lot colder. But that's the fun of it. It's like train when no one else is training.
Brilliant. Spider, we're going to tag an athlete or someone. Who do you think should be coming up on the Physical Performance Show? Who do you want to throw in the deep end?
I've heard this guy speak a couple of times, and I think he's got a great story. And I don't know if you've chatted to him before. The world's strongest man, Warwick Brandt.
Haven't chatted to Warwick.
Warwick Brandt, his backstory is rugby league player for South Africa, broke his neck, and was told he couldn't play rugby, so went on to become Australia's strongest man. And the weights and what he lifts and what he does for charity and everything outside of that, and because of his size was nowhere near as big as the other guys, but to be able to hold world titles was an unbelievable story.
Fantastic. And Spider, if listeners want to follow more about your journey, your projects, obviously if you're on the Gold Coast or in the southeast Queensland region, tune into 92.5 FM and hear the very popular Bridge and Spider show in the morning. And other projects, where can we find out more about those? Yeah,
all our stuff's on, like everyone's social media. So Great Australian Doorstep. So, long name, Great Australian Doorstep, but that's it's a travel show, which is now lucky enough to be in Australia, New Zealand, the only Australian travel show in China. So, that's going really, really well. And it's more about caravan and camping and getting out there and seeing the world that way. A lot of motorhomes and, mainly all our stuff's kind of through that or, I think Instagram, Spida Everitt, and I spell it Spida, just trying to be cool with young kids, but... follow us there. But
and listeners, we'll tag all that up in the show notes. Spida Everitt, I know you're a man on a tight schedule, and so we really appreciate you coming in today.
No worries, thank you.
The highs, the lows, and the learnings of your career. And mate, wish you all the best for some future marathons, perhaps.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. As I said, you taught me a lot through the first marathon, and it will get me through the second and third whenever they are.
I'm going to pull out a snake on the course next time.
Don't do that. I'll run fast.
Well done, mate. So, listeners, there you have it. I trust you enjoyed another episode of the Physical Performance Show featuring Spida Everitt. If you did, then please let Spider and myself know. You can tag me in @Brad_beer on any of the social media handles, Twitter or Instagram. Please let Spider know also. You'll find Spider's handles over at the show notes on pogophysio.com.au. Listeners, a big thanks to those that have been leaving reviews of the Physical Performance Show. I really appreciate it. It helps the show go further and get into the earbuds of more people who, just like you, are looking to pursue and perform at their physical best. If you'd like to leave a review, it's really simple. Jump over to iTunes from your desktop computer, simply click ratings and review and rate away. 1 star or 5 stars, you choose. Hopefully it's 5. If you'd like to subscribe to the Physical Performance Show, that'll populate the show each and every week into your device. Then simply hit subscribe from within your app or your favourite podcast player. If you missed last week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, be sure to jump back and check out episode 84 featuring the voice of cycling, Mr. Phil Liggett, MBE.
Well, you've got to have, these days they look at numbers. Again, it's another one of my pet hates. And I think it's Contador's recently said they shouldn't have these wattage machines on their bikes because numbers, for me, make them robots. And at the end of the day, as Paul Serwin used to tell bike riders after he'd finished the tour and he was talking to them, he said, listen, what you've got to remember is you've got to just fucking suffer, mate. That's all it is. Don't give a shit, because Chris Boardman used to say, I wasn't getting the numbers today. And Paul saying, bugger the numbers, just bloody suffer.
Phil's interview has been incredibly popular. So if you are a cycling fan, a lover of the Tour de France, a lover of two wheels, or just a lover of sport or great commentary, jump back over and check out Phil Liggett. Listeners, coming up in next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, we feature another expert edition. This time I had the pleasure of catching up with Dr. Chris Vitulo, knee orthopaedic surgeon here on the Gold Coast. In next week's episode, we talk about all things knee pain, all things knee rehabilitation, and all things, of course, knee surgery. We talk about current surgeries, breakthroughs, statistics, and future directions of knee surgery. So it's a very practical but very insightful and interesting episode. Be sure to jump in next week and check it out. So listeners, until next time, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer and this has been the Physical Performance Show.